can't even make a tea. Like, this is tea. Like, you shouldn't be like, it's just plain tea. Am I good enough? Having a lot of self-doubt.
Okay, so people fear death, and the second thing that they fear is public speaking.
The spiritual journey or the self-growth journey is not always pleasant. It's usually dark.
हेलो एवरीवन, गुड मॉर्निंग, गुड इवनिंग, गुड आफ्टरनून, किसी भी समय पे आप इस वीडियो को देख रहे हैं, आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है. यू आर वाचिंग रिदम रिवाइव एंड विद मी टुडे इज अ वेरी वेरी स्पेशल गेस्ट. हर नेम इज दीपा कृष्णमूर्ति एंड दीपा से मेरी मुलाकात हुई थी when we were doing happiness coaching together. Yes, so lots and lots of good stories coming your way, क्योंकि आज हम बात करने वाले हैं ऐसी चीजों की जहां पर आपको शायद लगता हो कि आप अकेले हैं. But we want to tell you that you are not alone. Even all of us, in fact, every human being goes through those issues. So we are going to deep dive on things which really matter to us, and somewhere or the other हम उसके बारे में सोचते रहते हैं पर किसी से बयान नहीं कर पाते हैं. और इसीलिए आज हमारे साथ जुड़ी हैं हैप्पीनेस कोच दीपा कृष्णमूर्ति. दीपा, वेलकम टू द शो.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
Deepa, for the audience, if you could tell us about yourself.
Okay. It's always fun when you introduce yourself because that's like a self-reflection exercise. I'm Deepa Krishnamurthy. I hail from Bangalore. I am 34 years old. And just a little bit about me. I come from a family of 4. I was born in Coorg. I was brewed in Chennai. I came down to Mysore for my engineering. Yeah, I started off as a developer in my career. And right now I work as an HR because I very soon in my career realized that I'm a people person. And it's been going great. I consult with 2 companies and I help build the HR ecosystem for newborn startups. And I think the happiness coaching, how I came across that was 2 years ago when I had my journey that began with self-reflection and self-growth. I think we'll talk more about it in the episode, that it was a beautiful coincidence how happiness coaching got stitched into this entire journey. And I'm very passionate about everything that I do. I'm an animal lover. I love traveling and I'm a plant parent. And as you know by now, I am extremely extroverted. And yeah, let's take the conversation forward, Sahytya.
Wow, fantastic to know about you. And I really love the way you delved into small things. And one of those things, you said that you wanted to be a people's person. You are a people's person. So it's always been like your energy is contagious. When did you actually get to know that, okay, I'm a people's person?
Okay, so I think I was always reminded from the time I was a child that I was a very happy kid. It wasn't really difficult for me to get along with people. So I think that sense of this is who I am was sort of engraved in my heart by my parents. I think they did a really good job. And I think it's also a bit genetic because my dad is 10 times extroverted than I am. Like, he can just light up the room like this. He can just have a conversation with anyone as young as a 2-year-old till someone who is like, let's say an 80 or 90-year-old.
Wow.
So it's a combination of genetic and also comes very naturally. Like I do love, so for me, okay, so I think this will probably answer your question, right? If I'm able to make 2 people smile through a conversation, especially strangers, in a day, I think I go to bed happy. So this is where I realized that, oh yeah, I am a people person. I am able to have not just my friends, not just my colleagues, but even strangers open up to me in a way that they perhaps did not open up with anybody else. And I started recognizing that it's definitely a great characteristic trait, and I should do something these lines. Perhaps a profession, which of course we'll talk about. But I do thrive on the energy of interacting with people. Like I'm in my element when I'm in a crowd.
Wow.
So
and also somewhere the other, it is in you, and it is pretty natural to you. A lot of people think that, okay, I'm not able to talk to people. Okay, I'm not that
Right.
confident. Have you ever come across a situation wherein you have not been confident?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it was a bigger jolt for me to have that issue with confidence because I've always been a very confident kid. But
Mm-hmm.
I think adulting, that is like post 30, was when a lot of things started hitting me because I think that's when every human being goes through the spiritual awakening, essentially,
Mm-hmm.
right? So for someone who was really good, so I'm also an ex-Toastmaster, which I did not mention. Like I've been really good with public speaking, and suddenly for someone like me to go through that phase of am I good enough, having a lot of self-doubt,
Mm-hmm.
which of course was another journey to try and figure out why is this happening to me and how did this happen to me in the first place. I was able to step into the shoes of people who've had to go through this all their life, and yeah, it was definitely a journey. I think awareness of having that self-doubt and where it's stemming from
Mm-hmm.
is the first step to figuring it all out. And yeah, I mean, it's still a process. Like I still do have a lot of self-doubt even today, where there are times when I'm super confident, but there are
Mm-hmm.
times where I'm like, I question everything, like I second guess everything. So I would definitely love to dwell deep into this topic because it's a very deep topic in itself. So
Absolutely.
how about you? I'd also
For
like to know
me,
your journey. Yeah.
for me, it's been like I have always been bang opposite, not an extrovert, but an
Okay.
introvert.
Okay.
And
Right.
it's been a difficult thing to, speak to people. But when I get on stage, that's a different
Mm.
thing. Okay, so there are two
Right.
variations. Off stage is a different
Right.
personality, on
Yeah.
stage is a different personality.
Yeah.
What you
Yeah.
said is awareness. If you're
Mm.
aware, where is the doubt
Mm.
coming from? Okay,
Yeah.
like when I started my journey, even though I was good on stage, but I was not that confident compared to what I am today. So the
Right.
level of
Right.
confidence was perhaps,
Mm.
I would say, zero when I started. Okay.
Mm.
And
Mm.
slowly and slowly, slowly and slowly, I think I got to know about my strength. I work on my strengths, work on my
Right.
weaknesses. I think I will be confident
Yeah.
more. I think
That's amazing.
the self-doubt thing, it just happens, right? We always question
Yeah.
ourselves, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's also how we are wired as a society. It's not just how you are brought up in your family, it's also how the place that you grew up also contributes to it. Like I grew up in Chennai, though I studied in an Anglo-Indian high school. It was pretty aggressive, but also the community that we stayed in was very, very traditional,
Hmm.
very, very orthodox. So I think that also sort of contributed in having to question everything that you do. And I think that's where those little seeds of self doubt was laid, which later
Hmm.
blew up when I started adulting. And it's a very interesting thing that you just said about being an introvert, right? So I'm also married. Okay, so I've been married for about 8.5 years now. And when I met my husband, who I so fell in love with and still am
Hmm.
in love with, was an introvert, and he was a man of a very few words. And his journey in the last 2 years, starting up with public speaking and being able to transition into an ambivert from an introvert is so
Hmm.
empowering because just because someone is an introvert and just because they're not comfortable talking doesn't mean they have brilliant ideas. And when someone who's an introvert is able to get out of the self doubt and work on it, oh my God, very empowering to hear people share about their journey from being an introvert to an ambivert and then an extrovert. So more power to you. That's
Absolutely.
that's a very empowering journey that you just spoke about.
Thank you so much. At the same time, you were talking about, society and the
Mm.
situation that you have gone through in your childhood. And
Right,
that's a very,
right.
very tricky situation in your school days,
Yeah,
how you
yeah,
were and how you were treated. And
yeah.
did you come across judgments? And
Oh,
what
yes.
impacted you as a person? It changes your perception before you talk to
Right.
somebody or before you go on stage. Do you feel that that's a very important part, and anything that you would like to share when it comes to the judgment part? Because everything is like what
Yeah,
people think about me. That's the biggest
yeah.
barrier, isn't it?
So wonderful question. Certainly, a very self-reflecting question, I must say, because I was the firstborn in my family. So while my parents never put the pressure of how I should be as a child,
Mm-hmm.
it was engraved in my brain that I should do everything 100%. So I, at a very young age, have been suffering from a perfectionist syndrome that I'm sure a lot of, I'm sure you relate to, and a lot of our listeners are able to relate to, which we struggle with. And yeah, like fear of being perceived is something that um it's very interesting. Like I was never really worried about how I would really be perceived at home because it sort of made me a rebel. But I
Mm-hmm.
was always worried about how I would be perceived outside of home. So it was a very huge contrast. But at the same time, I mean it's very deep, right? At the same time, I still seek my parents' validation. But I think it's been a journey where I've started like, okay, so however I've been able to deal with this is one, self-love, loving myself, learning to love myself, which is very, very
Okay.
important, which I didn't know, which is how I was always a people pleaser most of my life. And two, I think self-love part comes from inner child healing, wherein the simplest thing that I can tell right away in a few words is whenever you
Mm-hmm.
have a conversation with yourself, look at yourself like the 6-year-old you or the 5-year-old you who's so innocent, who has dreams about the world, who has no bias at all. And that really helped me move away from self-criticality because I would always like talk down upon myself. Like I was very critical on myself. Like I
Mm-hmm.
would I would always have these very harsh conversations with myself that sort of killed my confidence. So, for example, like I was just thinking about this. Okay, I've just made tea, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just digressing a little bit, but I want to talk about self love. I have
Yeah.
made tea for myself, so I'm sipping it right
Mm-hmm.
now. It didn't turn out the way I did.
Mm-hmm.
So Deepa before would have told, Arey, yeah, you can't even make a tea. Like this is shitty. Like you should be like, it's just plain tea. Like you can't even make this. But now the conversation that I have with myself is, oh wow, this is nice. This is a different flavor altogether. Yes, it didn't
Yeah.
turn out the way I did, but this is so nice of you that you took time out for yourself to make it. So the tone
Wow.
changes, yeah, the tone changes everything, and it has made me a confident person. It has sort of, coming back to the topic, it has sort of brought me back to how the fear of judgment brings in a lot of limiting beliefs that you're not good enough, you're not doing something well, there is a certain way to do things, and if you don't, that means you're a failure. So fear of failure comes in. We want to share this. I saw this in a YouTube video where
Mm-hmm.
someone has defined the word fear. Fear is nothing but false evidence appearing real. How beautiful is
Mm.
that? Because we take
Yes.
it to our heart, we're always worried about how we're perceived, how we are judged, and that sort of stops us from unleashing our authentic self. And the moment we overcome that, oh, it's so powerful and beautiful. Like you can change the world. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
That's super, super empowering. And I can
yeah,
see that in
thank
your
you so
eyes,
much.
and the
Yeah,
entire segment that you spoke about. This is how we
yeah,
talk to ourselves, right? We sometimes even the world is not being too harsh. You are being harsh on yourself.
harsh on
Like
yourself. Yeah,
it's very important to get rid of not only about the judgments that come your way,
yeah,
but also not judging
yeah.
yourself. So one thing that you said,
Mm,
self-talk, self-love
mm,
is
mm, mm,
absolutely important. Other thing is, awareness
mm.
comes before even self love, right? That okay, this is the thing
Absolutely.
that is bothering you at the end of the day. How much is dropping the personality that you are, or dropping
Mm,
those beliefs that you have created for yourself, is important as
mhm.
well when it comes to building in confidence.
Okay, so the most difficult part to even, okay, awareness is very daunting. I think this is one thing that both you and I have discussed during our previous conversations, is that the spiritual journey or the self growth journey is not always pleasant. It's usually dark. It's so, how I look at it is when you are in the tunnel's dark, but at the end of the
Hmm.
tunnel, there's always light, right? So the unlearning part of things, especially when you are an adult, you are post 30, you are set in your ways, is definitely not easy because you've lived, considering our lifestyle, we have already lived half our life.
Yeah.
And we have had beliefs that are so engraved in us, it's so hard to move away from it.
Mhm.
But I think recognizing and unlearning is what takes a whole lot of your energy and time. With, let's say, for example, how was I able to get out of that self-critical talking, right?
Mhm.
And I've done that for over 30 years, and it wasn't easy. Like every time I would do something wrong, the first thing that I would say would always be negative, at least the first year. And then I would immediately switch in my head that, hey, I think you're being self-critical. And just recognizing and willing to make that change, because change is hard, let's be honest, it's not easy.
Absolutely.
Is I think, yeah, is everything. So making that effort to at least making that effort, I think builds more confidence where you start trusting yourself. Because I think all of this stems with not having enough trust with ourselves. And I'm not talking about the ego part, I'm talking about trusting yourself part. Because let's take me for example, I always advocated self-love. For the last 10 years, I've been advocating self-love until I really realized that I don't know how to love myself. And that was very daunting. I was like, oh, okay, how do you do
Mhm.
that? Like, how do you love yourself? And it was very interesting because I was advocating everybody that hey, it's very important to love yourself and so on. So unlearning that and getting out of your limiting beliefs, it's a journey. It's going to take some time. I'm still learning. I'm still getting there. But I think that's something that fascinated me with the happiness coaching certification entirely, because the course sort of taught us how to learn and redefine a lot of things that we see from the lens of who we are today,
Right.
and from a perspective that we've built as an identity in the society. But to peel all of that off and look at yourself as just a human being who's here to make the world a better place. So I hope I
Absolutely.
was able to answer your question. I hope I'm not
Yes.
digressing.
And once
Okay.
you feel, once you become that beautiful human being, and you can change the world for sure. It's a completely different journey altogether. This works even on stage. Talking to
Mm,
yourself. It is said,
absolutely.
if you are, because there are a lot of things when it comes to public speaking. I was speaking to one of the coaches, and he told me that after death, okay, public
Mm,
speaking is the second most difficult thing that people fear. Okay, so people
yeah.
fear death,
Yeah.
and the second thing that they fear is public speaking. So even while public
Absolutely.
speaking, just say that, if you
Mm,
are on the center stage, just tell yourself
mm,
that you are the king. Feel,
absolutely.
just tell yourself. So what you tell yourself, you become that. वो कहते हैं ना कि जैसा सोचोगे वैसा बन जाओगे, right?
Correct. That's very true.
So
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
that builds
Absolutely.
in big time confidence, isn't it?
For sure. I'd like to quickly add, if our listeners are looking for a technique to start, like where do I start? Like how do I begin, right?
Hmm.
Awareness is important. Like first know if you actually have self-doubt. Let's be honest, 8 out of 10 people do have a lot of self-doubt, or at least a hint of self-doubt. Mirror technique. Oh my God. Like you would have heard
Hmm.
a lot of people talk about this, but this does wonders. I've been doing mirror technique every day in the morning for over a year. The first 14 days are very difficult because you do it for 2 days, you're excited, and then the third day you're like, okay, probably I'll do it tomorrow. No, you like it or
Hmm.
you don't like it, just stand in front of the mirror. Like it should be within the first 15 minutes from the time you're up. So what my routine
Okay.
looks like is I do a 10-minute meditation in the morning on the bed as soon as I get up. And I just walk to the loo. There is a guided meditation that I listen to and I chant. So these are positive affirmations. Like very rightly, like you said, Sahitya, I'm the king. I am beautiful. I'm
Hmm.
amazing. This day is going to be great. It was so hard for me to say it the first 14 days because I didn't believe it. It was so hard for me to say I am beautiful. And
Yeah.
I think it's a beautiful journey. Like it shapes you as a very different person. And what's even more beautiful is people around you start noticing, like your loved ones I'm talking about. I feel so empowering. Like that's a huge motivating factor as well. So mirror technique is, I think, yeah, it
Fantastic.
changes the way you look at it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure, for sure. And I
Yeah.
think this is one of the techniques. I'm pretty sure, listeners might have heard of this, but would have not done
Mm.
it. And I'm really inspired by you doing it, practicing it for over a year, and
Thank you.
adding to it the positive affirmations.
Okay.
Everything stems from the emotions, right?
Absolutely.
Emotions.
Yeah.
भावनाओं से ही सब कुछ होता है, और आपको आप अपने बारे में ही ठीक भावना नहीं रखोगे तो आई थिंक हाउ विल यू ग्रो.
Exactly.
So so
Exactly. Yeah.
that's really important, and I think we covered a lot
Yeah.
of beautiful things. And I
Yeah.
hope the listeners really good insights from this, and let us make sure that we take one thing out of the entire thing and utilize
Mhm.
it on a daily basis, क्योंकि तभी significance रहेगा. And
Absolutely.
yes. So thank you so
Yeah.
much, Deepa, for joining us.
Thank you.
And we'll be continuing our podcast here and talking about things that we don't feel like talking. And we
Yeah.
generally don't talk to people about that. So thank you so much for showcasing what all do you do. And it was a great experience altogether.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm really looking forward to the conversations we could have because these are such deep topics. And
Yeah.
we do hesitate to talk about this because these are heart to heart conversations. And I just want to remind the listeners on your behalf as well, Sahitya, you're not alone. Like we're all going through this together. So have more conversations about this. Talk about how you feel, sharing and asking for help. Okay, I'll leave you with this thought. Sharing and asking for help, sharing how you feel, and asking for help is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. So
Yes.
just remember that you're not alone and yeah, just have fun. So thank you so much again,
Fantastic.
Sahitya. It's been amazing. Thank you.
Most welcome, and we might come up with this particular topic itself. I think I really
Yeah,
liked
yeah.
your sharing and asking for help. And I see a lot of people not doing it, unfortunately, and I don't know why.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? So that's so
Yeah,
important. And
for
as
sure.
always, we started off very impromptu kind of a thing. It's going to be like an impromptu conversation. All the listeners, you
Awesome.
are watching this, stay tuned for the next podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you.